Good evening and welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting of May 18th, 2023, our 31st meeting of fiscal 2023. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location stated in the posted agenda, and it's possible that all or some of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link shown in the posted agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28 and Charter Channel 192 or via Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. This meeting will be live streamed and recorded by Westborough TV, and we thank them for their continued support. So, yes, so one of the suggestions, since our meetings are going to be done remotely, is just do a quick roll call so our scribe will know who's here. So I guess that's starting with you today, Jean.
Green Clark, present.
Tom Dolan, present.
Gene McMahon, present.
Rod Shafford, present.
Leslie Shepherd. Leslie present, only mentally. Okay. Our first order of business actually is to introduce our new administrative secretary, Laura Clifford, who has joined us briefly on Zoom. Hi, Laura.
Hello, everybody.
Nice
to meet you all virtually.
Well, someday maybe in person, but Laura's agreed to do our minutes, and we'll be doing those via the broadcast or recording of the broadcast typically. And so again, as a reminder to the committee, it's good for motions and seconds to announce your name because that will make our job easier, which we are in favor of. So Laura, it's nice to meet you. I know you work in an adjacent town. I don't know how much information you want to give about what you do normally, but
okay.
This is a part-time thing for you, but you had extensive experience in municipal administration already, so.
Yes, and I've worked for multiple boards and committees, and when they've been short-staffed, and helped out with minutes for other departments. I work in the Board of Health office, so
ours are easier, what you're saying, I hope. Anyway, she already has drafted her first set of minutes, which we'll be approving later tonight. And you did a great job, so thank you again.
Thank you.
And
thank you very
anybody
much.
have any other comments or welcomes? Or
Welcome.
Welcome.
So
Yep, thank you.
There's only 5 of us tonight. You'll have to see the other 4 some other time.
Sounds good. Well, it's nice to meet you all,
Okay.
and I wish you all a great night.
You'll be seeing it again or something like that.
I will.
We'll try to keep it
Thank you
short.
so much.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Take care. Good night.
Good night. Okay, so that was I have no other organizational updates other than her introduction. And other than, I was going to mention if people, because we did that roll call attendance, as if people are remote and they join later, it's good for us to point that out. I see there's one member, I believe, of the public who joined us as well remotely, besides Laura. And John Arnold, who is attending remotely tonight. Okay, so the next section is public comment. Is there anybody here? I know you're here to study us, not necessarily make a comment. Is the other person online wanting to make a public comment tonight?
Not now. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, sure. All right, so then we can move on right to the meat and potatoes of this, the DPW snow and ice wages to snow removal expenses, and introduce Director Payant.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Chris Payant, Director of Public Works. Here as
follow-up to a request that we've provided to the Select Board and the Finance Committee to move money within our own budget, the snow budget. So this is not asking for more money. This is just moving money inside of our budget from our wages account to our expenses account. That money is being requested to fund two things. One is to fix a maintenance issue that we have with a vehicle that we've deferred. And second is to fund, and the majority of it is to fund the purchase of salt, which we typically do at the end of every season, is basically restock for next year. Normal for us to do this. We did it last year. We did it every year before that. A couple of reasons for it. One, two main reasons. One is we don't want to get to next fall and learn that there's a trucker strike or some other thing that's going to prevent salt from being delivered, and we have a salt shed that's not fully stocked. The second is we renew our contract for salt every fall, and historically the prices have gone up. They went up by $10 a ton this past year. So to us, it makes sense to purchase the salt now at a known cost while we have the budget available to do so, and just be ready for the next winter season. So that's our request.
Okay, so anybody have questions? No? No?
So I sort of have a question, not necessarily specific to this. I know Rob had sort of passed along a little bit of this. So your, like the snow and ice removal expense, like that budget is maxed out, and the only thing that's left are wages on a relatively low snowfall year. So this year, obviously, there's not a problem. There's funds left. What would happen if we'd had a heavy snow? Do we just typically go over that budget and so that's just the norm we expect? If there's heavy snow, we're going to go over and have to move funds?
Yes.
Okay.
We communicate that with the Finance Committee, Town Manager, Select Board, but yes, that's the typical approach.
Okay.
So rather than allocating for the worst possible case, which means you're going to end up in essence taxing at the worst possible case, part of what the AFC reserve fund that we have,
Is
a large
for
chunk in the
worst
past
case.
anyway has gone onto those bad snow years.
Okay.
And then if you don't have it, you don't have to do it.
Then why are wages budgeted that high? Right? Because wages obviously are not proportionate to the supply expense if we have the money left in wages.
Wages might, that's all your employees, so it might just depend how much time they spent on that, or what, why. I mean, it's a small
Right,
amount.
because there's sort of a
it's not-
disproportionate use, right? I think I have the numbers, like, you've used, 90% of the other expense and, 60% of the wages or something? So it's a disproportionate sort of utilization of those pools. Is there a reason why they're budgeted that way, or is that just how we typically do it and we've rolled over prior years' numbers?
It's historical, but if we adjust our budget, then we aren't able to do the name escapes me, but when we can spend without
Right.
when we can overspend, essentially.
Okay.
So it's remained steady state, and I mean, traditionally in a normal, I don't know what you call last year, whether you call it normal or not, but traditionally we would spend just about all of our budget. We didn't last year, so I mean, I take that as a good thing.
Yeah, certainly
and-
I'm not complaining that
Yeah.
we didn't spend the money. I was
Right.
just really more curious the process and why, so,
Yep.
okay.
And isn't it also the case that expenses actually cover a lot of the labor because we're hiring contractors
Contractors.
to do labor? And that would fall under expense, or does that fall under this wages thing?
That's our wages.
That
I'm
is-
sorry, that's our expenses.
Yeah,
Yep.
that
Yeah.
falls in. so.
Yeah, deficit spend, that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to think of the,
All right, this is
Term.
the only budget that can deficit
Yeah.
spend
Oh, interesting.
for us at least.
Okay.
for Westborough.
Sorry, I have
sorry,
all
no.
the questions because I'm new.
That's
And also
okay.
I'm an
That's good. That's
accountant,
why we're
so I
here.
really want to understand all of the
If you have the questions,
things.
so does the public. We're here to learn.
So I had two questions. One is, how much salt do we have in the shed now, say percentage-wise? And then Second question, which may not be for you, maybe for Christie, if we don't spend it, what happens to it? Presumably it goes to free cash?
Yes. Just like everything else that's
Yeah.
not spent by the end of the year,
Yeah.
fiscal year. In terms of how much salt we have, I mean, I can estimate, we probably have about a little over 2,000 tons of salt. We're ordering about 400 tons of salt. I think I put in the notes, we've done that 3 times this year. So we certainly have room for more salt. We just felt that ordering this kind of last round of salt before the end of the, as close out to the season was the appropriate way to spend the money. And we could, I know that the guys that manage this for us asked for twice as much as what we were, going to purchase. So there's room for more. I'm not sure if you're questioning, like if you're just trying to understand how much more capacity we have, or if we have too much, or what.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is, how much do we use in a typical year and how much do we have right now?
I think I put some numbers in there,
Yeah,
like
to that.
1,500 tons.
1,300 tons, it says
Yeah.
in here. Or we purchased 1,300 tons, which is 10, yeah, and you get them like sort of 300 at a time.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers off the top. I mean,
Yeah.
we send the numbers to various committees, and we have that, I think we shared that spreadsheet actually for the year. If we purchased 13, we probably used close to that amount. I don't know I mean, I certainly have them, but
Yeah,
it's-
my only point was if we have 2,000 now, is that a year's worth we have already? And is it justified to add more when we could put it to free cash and use somewhere else? Yes. So I was just trying to get an idea how much we use per year and how much we have already. That was my.
Yeah, I think I compared it to gas. I mean, like we have a storage amount of gas and fuel, and like it wouldn't, in my mind, make sense to ever not be full or not have a consistent plan to get to full. And it's the same approach for all of our commodities, including salt. I mean, we have all kinds of different commodities that we maintain at the DPW, besides salt and gas. And so what we're doing is remaining consistent with what we've done in the past that seems to work for us in terms of having the right amount to do the job and not be concerned that, we might not have enough when the time comes, should something significant, abnormal, whatever happen. So I don't think we're over asking, and we're certainly not, gonna take the other approach and take some risk, so.
A couple of questions. One is, how's this relate, I think you have a tank, because you also do liquid salt stuff too, right?
We don't do any liquid.
Oh, you don't do any of the
No.
liquid? Okay. All right, that answers the question.
Definitely interested in doing that, but that's an expense that, in terms of equipment and then
You need
material.
different equipment then to distribute it.
Yes.
Because you spray it on and
Right.
whatever. Okay.
I think at some point in the distant past, we had done a little bit of that, but we don't do that now. We don't have the equipment or the storage capacity for it, so. that's what
Maybe
we
I'm
got.
thinking of the state that does it up on
state
the
does
highways
it.
or something, because I've seen it there, but yeah, okay. That's fine. And then the other question would be, since we're transferring out of wages now, but we kind of buy salt every year, have we typically gotten that money out of a reserve transfer or just other, or you don't know, or remember?
For past years?
Yeah, because.
Yep, I mean, last year we did you increased the snow budget, and part of that increase
Oh, part
included
of
the
it.
purchase of snow, or sorry, salt, not snow. So yes,
Yeah, that included some of the pre-purchase. That's where
Yes.
I was sort of going.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And, all right, and then my only one other comment is this is already approved by the select board at their last meeting.
yes,
Yes.
if you're asking,
Yeah.
yes, it was.
That's what I thought. Okay. Any other questions? We can make a motion. You wanna make a
McMahon, I make a motion to approve the transfer of $46,000 from snow and ice wages to snow removal expense.
Clap second.
Clap second. Okay, any further discussion? I don't think there's any members remote.
No?
So I think we can vote this here. So all in favor? No one opposed? That's 500, 5 being present. Thank you very much.
All right,
Chris.
thank you very
I'll
much.
sign the form and drop it off with Leah tomorrow.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is an update on ARPA projects with Town Manager Christy Williams, who's joining us, zooming in. Hello, can you hear us okay? Good.
Yep, sorry, I was just pulling up what I wanted to present. I think you all got in your packet from Walter the information about the current balances for ARPA. So I just wanted to walk through those. There we go. I wasn't gonna share my screen unless you need me to, Walter.
Everybody have a copy here? I think we're good.
Would it be helpful for?
It might be
viewers?
helpful for the
For
public
viewers?
or something, if you could do
For
that.
our large TV
It's
audience?
not that easy to see, but I mean,
Okay.
I can put it up.
For
It's
the
just,
thousands of people, well, at least Laura, who will be watching it later to do the minutes. But actually, she has the copy of
Oh, okay.
she has a hard copy.
All right. Doesn't matter.
Okay. So either way, if it's a pain, you can go on.
so it sounds like you want me to share it, or no?
If it's
I
relative,
just-
if it's easy
okay.
enough. I think
Okay,
that
it's just
Westborough
not easy.
TV would love it.
There you go, okay. So this is the allocation, oops, so far of the ARPA projects. So this is all projects that, just to sort of go through the process, as a reminder, back in August of 21, we had initially sent out ARPA forms for departments and, at the time, relevant committees, relevant meaning committees that we thought would have projects that could be spent within the guidelines of ARPA. And we asked them to fill out the forms and to let us know if they, what projects they wanted to pursue. All of those came back, and we had over $11 million in requests. However, we only have $5.6 million in ARPA funds, or 5.7. So our process was that the finance team, which is made up of myself, finance director, chief assessor, assistant town manager, treasurer collector, the chairs of the school committee, your committee here, the finance committee, and the select board, as well as superintendent and their finance person over there. We reviewed all of the projects and we made a recommendation to this committee. And then we reviewed with this committee and the select board in a joint meeting in May of last year the projects, and the select board voted to award after the finance committee voted to recommend. We've had a couple adjustments to this since that time. We did increase the funding for the fire department radio infrastructure. We also increased funding for one of the DPW projects. I'm just taking a look here. The water quality chlorine potassium hydroxide project. And then we did some additional funding for the Armstrong roof project to cover some unanticipated change orders. All of those went through the exact same process as I just described. So as you all know, we need to obligate these funds by the end of calendar year 2024, meaning that they need to be under contract, and then they need to be spent by the end of calendar year 2026. So we are working to make sure this funding gets allocated. We continue to hear that on the federal level, if there are entities, states, or municipalities that are not spending this money, that there could be an interest in clawing back some of that money to the federal government. So we certainly don't want that to happen with any of our remaining funds. And so we have allocated, as you can see, the majority of our funds. So here we've listed the departments. So we've, I think, done a good job at making sure that they're allocated throughout all town and school. And then the project names, the amounts that were awarded are here. And then the reason that you see this report in the form that it's in is because this is a sort of a summary report of what we need to report to the federal government, and that report was due April 1st. So money that's been expended, purchase orders outstanding are showing, and then also the balances. So we've been following up with the different departments on their spending plan and their timelines, and then really looking at what the uncommitted balance might be related to that, related to the use of the funds that have been awarded. So if you can see at the bottom here, this uncommitted balance is at $221,377. Jen's going to talk to you tonight about her project and some reallocation of that funding. So her project here is the splash pad of the 275. If that reallocation is accepted and approved by the select board, then this uncommitted balance would go up to about $400,000. And so we have already sent out a third ARPA form for departments to send in requests to obligate that additional $400,000, which again would go through the same process that I described. So I just wanted to give you an update. I'm available to answer any questions, and then you can hear from Jen on her presentation.
Okay. Tom, any questions?
No, it's straightforward to me.
No.
Rob?
So I had questions on two of them, and one of them maybe Jen will probably talk about later is the splash pad, which I'm very interested in. But the other one I'm curious about is the high school chiller project, because I understand they went out to bid and the bids came in much higher than expected. And I don't know if this is the forum to discuss that, but.
I can give you the information that I have, but I certainly, the school department would be better prepared to give you more information. But they do have a purchase order outstanding for $99,200, so that's of the $1.62 million that was allocated. My understanding is that the way that it was bid, and certainly we'll check with Amber, but my understanding is the way that it was bid was that they would be able to move forward with pieces, even though the bid, I think, did come in higher than that 1.6.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what I had heard I think at the school committee meeting was exactly that, like the gym chillers could be separated from the whole building chillers, and then I think the whole building fits in that bucket or something.
Yeah.
But like you said, we could get an update from them later in the year.
Yeah, I think it'd be good.
Jane?
So I'm just curious, and I think you sort of already said, but I wanted to clarify, there's 6 of these projects that have no expenditures or minimal expenditures. Are we confident that we'll actually have expenditures on those in time? I mean, are there specific delays with any of them, or are they all just a slower rollout because we're working on other projects? Or 6 just seems like a lot to not have any activity.
Sure. So I can kind of walk through them. One of them, sorry, I'm just looking at it. One of them is the business working capital grants. That one I would specifically attribute to just all of the grants that the EDC is managing right now. So they actually have just started creating the guidelines for that. So we do feel confident that that will get expended by probably the end of calendar year 24, even though we have through calendar year 26. The radio infrastructure, that's really, as you've heard from us many times, is an issue just in terms of getting, we do have a response on that, but just in terms of getting the materials and everything, it's just, there's just a delay, but we do feel like confident in that as well. The splash pad you'll hear more about, the high school chillers we just discussed. And then the other two are those youth and family service contracts, which I'm glad you raised that. So as you all know, since November, I think we have not had, no, not November, but for the last couple of months, we have not had a youth and family services director. And so what we did was we had not executed contracts by the time she had left. And so we're holding that funding for youth and family services, but we were waiting for a new director to start in order to have someone be able to manage those contracts and potentially even offer alternative thoughts about what that money could be used for.
And I guess we could ask Chris when he was here, but what is the holdup on the DPW water? Not,
Yeah. So there's
Oh,
no
sorry.
expenditures on the
'Cause
DPW
that's a
water
big one.
or the MassWorks matching funds. Those are both ones that
well,
haven't been.
MassWorks makes sense because they haven't required us to pay yet.
Oh, okay.
So that-
Yeah, so the MassWorks matching funds is part of a $6 million project that is moving forward.
Okay.
So that's local contribution, so that will be spent in time. We're confident on that. I would have to ask Chris related to the water project.
Okay.
If I had to guess, it still needs to go through engineering, then put out the bid.
All right, well, we can follow up with him at another time. Anybody else, any other questions on the ARPA? So, oh yeah, I had one more question, because on the police officers, because we didn't hire them when we thought we would, aren't we gonna end up with extra money there as well?
Yeah, I believe that has already been acknowledged in the uncommitted balance because it was related to the money that we didn't spend. So we allocate, the money that was allocated would have covered all of fiscal '23, but we didn't hire immediately. So I think that has already dropped down to the uncommitted balance.
Okay, cool. Very good. So, yeah, it seems like, since we only have till the end of 2024, the tricky part is you have to spend it all or you give it back. And so even these other projects, you know, with contingencies and stuff, it seems like it's a very hard way to do it to me personally. I'm not a municipal finance person, but, you know, you can't go over and you can't go under, in essence. Which is
Right. So
hard
each of
to
these
do with a lot of
departments-
these bigger things.
Each of these departments has to have enough funds to cover the difference, right? Because
In
if we want to
essence.
spend it all, they're going to have to go over, and you're going to have to, from your budget, hopefully make
Or
up
you
that
just
last $7,
slightly
or you know what I mean,
underspend.
hopefully, right,
Yeah. Yeah,
Well-
it doesn't make it easy.
right. It's a challenge for any of them.
I mean, yes, but it's really like, I mean, we get millions of dollars in grants every year, and it's really treated, even though it's being awarded by our local bodies, it's really like any other grant that we would receive. So, I just wanted to add, so I just actually, Chris is watching, so he said we're going through the permitting process now with DEP, and so they'll go out to bid this summer.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, because we certainly don't want to leave that, we don't want to leave that big number on the
So
table.
that was that's a big one.
We Definitely want
Right.
to spend that, yeah.
That's why we're watching it really closely now too, and making sure, you know, more than we were as we get closer to that deadline. Because obviously we need to give people runway once we award. If we have to reallocate and re-award, people need time to get it obligated by the end of '24, so we understand that, working towards that.
Sounds great. Okay, so I assume in the fall, we'll probably hear more about this as
Yep.
well as we get closer. Anybody else? If not, I think we could go to the subset of this, the recreational splash pad with Jen Kirkland, our recreation director. Well, we have slides.
Just a few. Well, this happened last time where I can't see here. That's okay. Hi, my name is Jen Kirkland. I am the Recreation Director. here in town, and I'm just going to talk a little bit tonight about a project that we've been working on for a couple of years now, the dog park, and then I'm going to also talk a little bit about how we, we were awarded money for a splash pad and why we're deciding to pull back on that project right now and ask for this reallocation of money to put towards our dog park. I'm here tonight to ask for $107,915.23 of awarded ARPA money to put towards the Westborough Dog Park. Over the past couple of years, and even longer to be honest, we've been talking about the possibility of building a dog park at the old state hospital property. It's a amenity that a lot of, we've heard a lot of feedback, people want this here. There isn't one in town. It's a need that, that we feel like we can serve. And so as we started to look into it, we learned more about a grant that will fund 90% of this project, the Stanton Foundation grant. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that grant and what it covers in a little bit, but basically it'll cover up to 90% of the hard construction costs and 100% of the design costs. So we worked with a design firm to help us create a budget for this dog park, and it's estimated that the town will be responsible for $107,915, and this includes the 10% of the hard construction costs that's required by the grant and all applicable soft costs. So this is just a preliminary schematic drawing that was done by our DPW engineering department. This is just a kind of very basic drawing of what the dog park could be. Our next step is to retain a designer that would design a full-fledged drawing that would be suitable to go out to bid. And I just thought this might be helpful to show kind of a more detailed picture of where the park will go. This is the state hospital property. You can see there, we have our soccer fields. There's a new cricket pitch going in, and the dog park will be right there as you enter the property on the left. So we were previously awarded $275,000 in ARPA funds to build a splash pad at Bay State Common. After a lot of work and research, the quotes that we were getting were coming in much higher, and we did explore potential grants to help cover the difference in those costs. The most recent grant that we looked into was, one of the conditions of the grant was that the property, if you were awarded the money, the property that the splash pad would be built on would have to be converted into protected open space conservation land, which obviously would not be suitable for Bay State. There were a couple of other factors that also played into our decision to pull back on the project. The scope of the project is much larger than I think, definitely myself had anticipated. There are a lot of moving parts to building a splash pad. And as we got further into the project, some questions about the location, parking, additional shade, additional bench seating, all kind of were starting to come up, and we didn't have great answers or really the money to kind of address those. So early this year, we decided to pull back fully on this project and kind of just put it on the back burner for now. So this is just a little bit more about the Stanton Foundation grant. The design grant will cover up to $25,000 of design costs. The construction grant will cover 90% of the park's hard construction costs. And then there's a capital improvement grant that will cover costs after the park is open for at 12, 18, and 24 months for any kind of improvements and things like that you need. So this is just a timeline of, if everything goes according to plan, when our dog park could be open. So we're awarded the design grant May 2023. This June, we'd go out to put out RFPs for architects to design the park. This summer, we would retain and work with an architect to design the park and get construction bid documents ready. And then over the fall, those documents have to go back to the Stanton Foundation for review. And then RFPs go out late fall for construction. And then late fall into 2024, we would start construction for the dog park, and September 2024 is a realistic time frame of when the dog park could be open. My last slide here is just something I felt like maybe I should put up here. This is a conceptual plan that was done in 2016. That is the state hospital property. This is by no means set in stone as to what is definitely going to be happen up there, but we retained Gale & Associates to look at the space, look at what the town currently has, and they put together this plan of what potentially could be up there. So I don't know how familiar you are with the property already, but it already is home to 7 soccer fields, a multi-purpose field, We're building a cricket pitch up there right now, and we do have those two parking lots down at the bottom there, closest to the lake. And you can see there is a dog park that is called out in this plan. Granted, we did move it down. It's up here.
Where's the cricket pitch in this
Right
drawing,
here.
so I can orient? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and that, it's just funny, not to get off topic, but the people that designed this, it was before we had a cricket pitch in town, and after having the one at Hennessy, we now know that a cricket pitch could never coexist on another field. It's way too busy of a place, so it needs its own dedicated space.
Are we still planning on putting a softball field?
Like I said, this is just a conceptual
Well, I know.
plan,
I
yeah.
just- it is
No real
thinking, I
plans for a
haven't heard anything
softball
about
field,
that.
it was just sort of, this is what
Yeah.
you could do in this space.
It gives you the size.
Yeah, yep,
So
exactly.
could you just show with your pointer where it's planned now?
For the dog park would actually go kind of right here where the softball field is slated.
Yeah, because the entrance is down the lower right.
Yeah, this is like Lyman's down here, Hospital Road.
And, yeah, is this also where that new tree thing is? It's like almost like an
Yep.
arboretum.
That was
That's on the
DPW's
water.
project, but I believe, I'm not great at maps, I think the trees might be kind of over here.
What is that project?
I'm not sure, it's DPW's project. I think they just, I know they were planting some new trees. I'm not 100% sure, though.
I think it's just a grove. It's just
It's the
a tree
plants and more
grove
trees.
with, I think there would be a bench.
So that's all I have for slides. Happy to answer any questions. I feel like I went through a lot there.
Questions? Jane? Rod?
So I
You just assume it'll be us.
I gotta start there.
Probably will be, yes.
I gotta,
Let's see how you do.
I gotta mix it
See if I can
around.
fill in the gaps.
So I'll have to say that, and Jen and I have traded some emails because I've done splash pads professionally as part of my job before, and very, very disappointed that we haven't found a way to make that work. And, without seeing what's been done already, I did talk to the splash pad contractor that I've worked with, and he felt for $275, that's a reasonable amount for a splash pad. Now, that may not take into account all the other peripheral things that go along with it, but, my general feeling is that to the extent that it was voted at town meeting and it's seen by the town as an important thing to have, I'd much rather see funds spent on that than the dog park, which hasn't been vetted by town meeting.
The splash pad didn't go to town meeting.
This is ARPA funds.
I thought there was something that it wasn't voted on at town meeting?
No.
Okay.
ARPA funds are in, the way we're doing this process now, it's the finance team, then AFC, then select board,
Okay.
because they're more like a grant and not, so.
Okay.
It didn't, but, I mean, your
My
point,
point's
your
still-
point
my
of your
point's still the
interest
same.
is still valid.
Yeah, I
because it
mean,
wasn't voted
I
at
guess
town meeting.
my point would be I'd rather spend $400,000 on a splash pad than $100,000 on a.
So just a
dog
note
park.
too about the price, so 275 was our number, and even the vendors we were talking with were like, yep, that's doable, until I mentioned that I wanted it to be recirculated water. And that's the piece that drives the price way up, because we would never want to just have a splash pad that's just dumping water down the drain,
Yep.
right? So we need, it's like a whole tank system underneath, you need a pretty extensive storage unit on site, and that is sort of the learning curve too. I was not aware of the intricacies of what goes into having a recirculated splash pad. So the vendors that I worked with, they were agreeing with you and that number until I said, well, this is for recirculated, right? And they were like, well, no. So I don't know what, if, you have, what kind of splash pads you've built or not, but it's it's the fact that we want a recirculated
Yeah,
system.
I think most of them are these days.
Yeah, so that was the price that, and we talked to 2 vendors and they were all consistently above 500,000, so.
Question?
So, I mean, I think this idea is great, right? This big master plan for that park. I mean, I live very near it, so it sounds like a really great idea. But I wonder, I mean, and I think a dog park is a great idea. There's certainly a need for it. But do we have, so this is a conceptual drawing that somebody made. This is not actually what we're building. Do we have a plan for that space, or are we just sort of sticking a pitch in here and a dog park in here and just, right, that's my concern, is are we hodgepodging things together without a big picture plan of what we could utilize all of the space for?
So I think that while this is conceptual, this plan was done with a lot of thought as to what the town, you know, could benefit from, what could fit there. And, you know, when we built the cricket pitch, it's because our cricket pitch down at Hennessy Field there's not enough time, there's not enough space. I mean, it's overbooked, it's constantly. Same with the dog park. There's been a lot of, you know, requests or, in our department, you know, we get a lot of complaints too about dogs being on playing fields, on trails, there's nowhere for dogs to go, things like that. So it's not necessarily that we're just kind of picking and choosing. I think that we do reference this often in our department. And, you know, while it was done in 2016 and it's just conceptual, I think we do use this as kind of a marker of when we're looking at projects and things.
My question is more really though in the location, right? So we're not putting a dog park where it is here, we're putting it down here where there's a softball field. If we decide we want a softball field in 2 years, do we have a dog park in the only space that would work, right? If we decide we need another soccer field, is it too close to the dog park and we have, right? And that was my sort of thought, right? Have we thought about how we're gonna utilize the space around it? And is this space going to be better suited for something else in the future and we're foregoing those future opportunities by making that decision here, right?
Does the dog park have to go through the planning board?
No,
Okay.
it does not.
It has sorry, Jen, it has gone through the capital planning committee. It's actually been on the capital plan for the last 3 or 4 years. So it has been vetted through the capital expenditure planning committee.
And I should say, no, it doesn't have to go through any, but I've talked to, when Jim was here, I've talked to Fred Leonardo, I've talked to Conservation. We've had all these conversations, so I just wanted to put that out there that we've talked to, I believe, all of the relative, you know, all the relative groups that we need to know about this project.
I was curious if alternative locations for the dog park had been considered, and specifically like VFW Park.
I believe Veterans is only zoned for passive recreation outside of the tennis courts, and so I don't think that we could build something like this there.
Okay.
Because I know a while ago people talked about maybe a playground over there, but that wouldn't be allowed because it's only zoned for passive recreation.
Gotcha.
So I don't know, this might be a gray area whether it's a dog playground, but
Yeah, no,
I don't know
that
if
makes
it
sense.
would
We're
fly.
not playing, it's
Are they
just
passive
Dogs,
dogs?
there's enough dogs over there anyway.
Right.
And we do feel like this location too, there are, like, a lot of our soccer fields are there, and people bring their dogs to that area anyway. There are a lot of trails right and
Yeah.
around that area, so there's already kind of the clientele is there, if you will.
Yeah. And then on the splash pad, you know, I wondered if it's worth keeping that even, I mean, I'm kind of with Rod. I would love to see the splash pad there even at 500,000. If there's going to be lots of ARPA funds left on the table, I'd rather spend them on a splash pad than not. I wonder if it even makes sense to rescind that part of the allocation yet. And do you feel like we're too far away from being able to commit those funds in '24, and that's why you want to rescind it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done to get a splash pad. I think what I would be more comfortable with would be, if anything, I would want to pay for a design, have somebody come in and design a splash pad that could go out to bid, so then we'd get an actual quote. That was another piece, that was getting an actual quote in our hands for how much all in would it be to put the splash pad in. Was very difficult just because of all the moving parts.
Sure.
So I think if we were talking, I think the next step for me would be to, and obviously I would, you know, it's up to Christy and Kim and things like that, but it would be to hire somebody to put a design together so that we could go out to bid and get a real number of what we're talking about. Because I think it's, that's what we just kept running into, that it was just more cost.
Yeah.
Well, and Jen, also, I don't know if you said it already, but there was issues with the location.
Yes, so that was part of it too. It wasn't just money, it was location, shade, seating. So I think there's more just work to be done around the project. And I think, yeah, with the time constraints of ARPA, I don't know if we could
But
get there, but.
are the issues with the location related to the grant?
No, they're related to zoning and also.
Okay, all right, that wasn't clear in the packet.
Okay, and they were also, there's zoning questions outstanding about where it could go, and we also did receive some concerning, or feedback from businesses in the area that were concerned about the project. So not to say that it couldn't happen, but there would be, additional conversations we would want to have.
Thanks.
Tom?
Just curious, as far as what the forecasted volume of use would be, and if there are any nearby dog parks that might be comparable. I think there's one in Hopkinton I saw. And I'm
Yeah.
just not sure if there are any other ones nearby, just to get an idea.
Tufts has one.
Tufts has one?
I have not done any outreach yet of how much it would be used.
Is it a
I wouldn't
potential
expect you to,
dog park, or is it
frankly.
just open
Yeah.
space?
So, just ballpark, if there are 2,000 dogs in 2022,
Yeah.
or 2,200 of them, and 100,000 is the ask, so it's $50 per dog. And then the life expectancy of the park might be 20 years or something like that, 10 or 20 years. I guess I was trying to get to if those who are benefiting from the dog park might share some of the expenses of it, and one way to recoup that might be through the dog licensure fee. I'm not sure where those fees go now. I think it's $15 if your dog's spayed and neutered, and what it would look like to increase that to $20 and maybe have $5 of that go towards something like a dog park.
Yeah.
So we can't do that. So the money that comes in from licensing goes into the general fund. So we couldn't redirect it to
You could,
the dog park.
you could vote to allocate so much a year from the
Yeah.
general fund, but it's the same as, and justify it by you got $5 extra, but you can't earmark, is that sort of
You
like that,
could,
right?
yeah, it could close out to free, well, I suppose you could anticipate it closing out to free cash. But
So are you talking about like
Wouldn't be
yearly
clean.
maintenance expenses?
No, just like, what do we come into long-term if we get the dog park in, and then who's gonna benefit from it, and the volume
Well,
of it?
who's gonna
paid for it?
maintain it? Is
Yeah,
a really good
all
question.
that.
Don't we outsource our grounds maintenance for most
good
of
for
the parks
two
We
anyways?
would,
so
the
we're
rec
paying a
department would.
contractor.
It would just be like one of our to other playgrounds in
Yeah.
town. The rec department would maintain it. I have talked to other towns about what their yearly maintenance costs are, and everyone is like maybe $500
Yeah, I
for
figured it's
dog
pretty
bed.
minimal.
It's very minimal. So I feel comfortable that we'd be able to maintain the park without having to come back to town meeting for any money, similar to our playgrounds. If there's a swing that's broken, we have that, we absorb that in our budget and we pay for that. And there's nothing, the biggest expense, I think, it's the fencing, really. There aren't a ton of structures like a typical playground that you'd have to worry about maintaining and things like that. Sure, there's maintenance, but like, I don't think, every town I've talked to is like the yearly typical expenses are so minimal, so.
But who mows the park? Like, who actually maintains the grass? Because I have to imagine a dog park is gonna be more maintenance than a field, right? There are people that will not clean up after their dogs, I'm confident.
It's like the special dog gravelish type stuff though, right?
So, also other towns that I've talked to, surprisingly, they are maintained pretty well by the users because the users want to keep them open. And sort of like we've seen with our pickleball courts, our cricket pitch, an organic group of typical users sort of kind of come together, and this is common in other towns as well. I've heard the same thing. And they almost sort of, you can develop friends of the dog park groups, but it's almost like unofficial kind of committees that sort of keep the facility in check, if you will. Like at our pickleball courts, I know there's a group that'll go down if it's slushy or a little bit of snow or rain, they'll sweep off the courts for people. We don't ask them to do that, it's just they love it and they want to play, so they upkeep it. And that's what I've heard about dog parks, is that people like having the facility, so they maintain it. With that said, it's the same thing, I apologize, I keep referring it to a playground, but if there's, something where, if there's graffiti at our playground, we handle it. If there's excessive mess at the dog park, we would just handle it. we're pretty well versed in maintaining facilities. You know, we have over 10 soccer fields, a bunch of softball and baseball fields, playgrounds, the beach. So we're pretty, and we have a lot of support too in the DPW department. We work well with them. So maintaining the facility, I'm not too worried about, especially talking to other towns and how they maintain theirs.
I just
Can I
want,
just-
go ahead.
I was just gonna add, and maybe you spoke to it already, but I just wanna, when you look at the spreadsheet or the breakdown of costs that Jen provided, you can see that half of the request is actually contingency.
Yeah,
And so,
we may not spend
of
it.
course, when you award it, when it becomes, when this is awarded to this project, you would certainly not be able to count on all that money coming back, but just wanted to point out that some of that money could come back because it is contingency.
And we would have to do something with it before 2024 as well.
Then it'd be back on the list.
But this sounds like
Yeah, I just
something
wanna
that
be
happens
clear,
kind
though,
of
that
quick.
We're not talking, I want to be clear that we're not talking about fiscal year 24, we're talking about calendar.
December
year
2024, yeah, big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 6 months there.
So I just wanted to make one more dog park comment. You know, we're dog lovers, and we want to take our dog to a dog park. And they are controversial because not all owners really take care of their dogs in those parks. And, you know, there's been liability issues and things like that as well. So it's not without some caution, I think, that we should proceed with this if we do proceed.
Is there liability for the town? Right, I mean, does the town bear some liability for an off-leash dog in an off-leash dog park?
No, not if we don't charge. Again, it's just like a playground. So, you know, again, if a kid gets hurt, it's, as long as we don't charge, we're okay.
Okay, my question is, who are the Stanton Foundation? Why do they do this? Is it owned by some dog that's super wealthy? I mean, Gunther.
No, they do.
I
Yeah, it's just a foundation. They do a lot of dog parks, but they also do a lot of like canine training. Almost, I wouldn't say every dog park in Massachusetts, but a good amount of them, if you were to look at how they were built, likely they came from Stanton Foundation.
Okay. And my other question is, your request is really twofold, so I want to explore maybe a slightly different solution. Is one, we could potentially support the expenditure on the dog park, but also make a recommendation at this time not to rescind all the money, but potentially to ask someone to come back maybe with a proposal to at least do a design or research of the splash pad, because I'll be honest, besides at the AFC, in other, I think there's a lot of popularity of the idea, and so maybe we, you know, exploring, using some ARPA funds to at least do an exploration and design, it seems like a very reasonable thing to do, and kind of might push it forward at some point. Because I think you could also potentially do some of the splash pad, particularly if the cost was less in another site or something, with some fundraising efforts too. I mean, we put in the football field here, or whatever it was, fields up there. I mean, it was huge. And in fact, the Tot Lot Park down there itself was funded through donation. So.
Can I just?
Yeah.
So we can't fundraise?
No.
That would have-
Could have a Friends of the Splash Pad.
Right, but we can't create that.
No, I know.
So I just want to be clear that if people are interested in doing that, that happens completely outside of, you know, my control or Jen's control,
Sure.
or any works for the town. I also just wanted to add that, what you're suggesting, I think, I understand where it's coming from, it's just a little bit outside the process that
Okay.
we've set up. So I guess I would say that Jen has the opportunity to submit an additional ARPA proposal. And so that would go back to the finance committee, related to what the finance team, related to what she's actually requesting, related to the splash pad.
Okay. And I think there was some support there for that same kind of concept. So, I guess if somebody wants to make a motion, we could do it. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, do we need one motion or two?
I
separate
think we
motions?
just, no, because what Christie just sort of said is we can't allocate the funds to something else, so,
No, I understand that, but.
and
It's
it's
probably
two
one
different-
motion
You
to.
take one motion, okay.
Yeah,
I
rescind.
think it's just-
I think you should make two, I think you should make two motions.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think you make one.
Well, what
one
are the two
to
motions?
reallocate, yeah, and then one to recommend that Jen pursue additional ARPA funding for design of the splash pad. Is that what I think you said?
No, I was wondering if we
Yeah,
had
right.
one motion to rescind the original to recommend rescinding the original
Okay.
funding, and then a separate motion to recommend approving the new funding.
Okay, yeah, I think you could do that either way, sorry.
But if we can take care of it in one, that's fine too.
okay, so I'm a little lost here, because one thing we have to, we would like to make a motion to, I think, she's requesting that we basically authorize 107,916 roughly
Right,
for a dog park.
yeah,
And out of the 275 that was previous, and then, sort of like Christie said, we could make a second motion of our recommendation to perhaps explore
Okay.
coming back
I'm
with a
with you now.
second
It's all
request.
one
Does
then.
that make sense?
kind of.
You
All
don't-
right,
we
so-
need two or one? What's the general consensus before we waste our time with this?
I like, my preference would be to vote for the splash pad and vote for the dog park separately. So
Okay.
my
I
second
my
that,
motion
Ron.
would be to
Yeah.
reject what's being proposed here,
Right.
and then have a separate motion if we
All
wanted
right,
to.
I'll do two motions,
I
and
think
we'll
that's.
stop talking
so you
about
can
it,
vote
and then
separately.
it'll be
Okay.
faster anyway.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Yes.
All right. So the McMahon, I make a motion to recommend $107,916 be approved from ARPA funds to support the construction of a dog park.
okay, is there a second? Yes, no, I'll second. Leslie second, sorry. 16, any further discussion?
So I guess my concerns on this are that we use the engineering time to establish the best location for the dog park, because I have the same concerns. This is a prime location at the entrance to the Chauncey Way there. I'm not convinced it's the best place for a dog park. But that, I mean,
Can I just,
yep.
can I just add, sorry, when Jen goes to the select board on Tuesday, one of her requests is for them to authorize her to put the dog park in that location because it's under the control of the select board.
I mean, I think my concern is the same. I think that that park provides such a huge opportunity to do some really great things, and I think that we need a more comprehensive plan for the whole park before we start work, especially a dog park, because I do think it's something, there are people that don't like dogs, there are people that aren't going to be comfortable, and so really being thoughtful in terms of where we place things so that we don't limit future opportunities. So I tend
Although-
to agree with Rod.
Although the point of a dog park is that you're not really in the public, you're in a fenced-in area with your dog, and
Right.
therefore, people that don't want to be near dogs shouldn't be inside the dog park, and if they're outside, I don't know that it really matters.
Right. Well, but my point is sort of, if you look at the conceptual drawing, they have the dog park sort of at one far corner, and here we're suggesting it right next to the parking lot, right? And you're right, it's a fenced-in area, and it's not, but they're also, I mean, it's where the softball field was supposed to be, and maybe someday we want, and maybe we don't want a softball field, I don't have any idea. I don't play softball,
Yeah, there was
but.
no cricket pitch
right,
back
it's-
then, I think, in the
Yeah.
plans.
And it just,
Yeah.
there's no parking lot that's by there
Yeah,
either, too. It's,
there's no
and it's
parking lot there
pretty
either.
that location was ideal to us at that property because it's so far away from where the kids, and to your exact point, like, all the kids play soccer pretty far up. It's away from our multi-purpose field. It's sort of out of the way, just in a different spot out of the way. But just-
Okay, any further comments? Okay, well, let's vote. In favor? 2? Three in favor? Against? 2. So that's passed 3 to 2 with 5 present. To 2. Okay, so now,
Okay, now, McMahon, I'll make a second motion to recommend rescinding the $275,000 in ARPA funding for the rec department's splash pad project.
isn't exactly what you asked, right? Because we sort of we used 100 and something of it,
Right,
so
but-
there's only so much remaining.
It's only like 100.
Well, we approved, we're recommending the 107,
Yeah.
we're recommending rescinding the 275.
Well,
That's what I was asking about the two
I
separate
think we're
things.
rescinding whatever's remaining,
Right.
right? Which is,
167.84, roughly.
oh, it's still 275 on the ARPA report. On the status report that Christie gave us, it still shows 275 available.
So I think what,
Well, that's because that was before
Okay,
Jen came.
If we subtract out the 107,916, you have 167 left, roughly.
Yeah,
Whatever
again,
number's in it.
it's two separate actions versus one.
Yeah.
So instead of netting it all out, because we're not, we didn't vote to change or we didn't recommend to change the purpose in the second one.
right. We recommended a new project, and I think now then
New doc,
our
yeah.
recommendation
Right.
has
I
to
don't-
be
I don't
canceling
think it
the
matters.
previous one, the net impact being the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Are you
That's
okay
what
with
I was
that,
trying to get
Christie?
to.
We're not screwing you up with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the motion was to allocate ARPA funds, so it seems like your next motion would be to
Rescind.
rescind the full award.
Okay. Yeah, that's
But I
fine.
know I think I know what you're doing, so.
Well, I can have one of us.
Yeah, I think we need to rescind the full amount because we
Okay.
approved
So-
the new amount.
So the motion is to rescind the full amount. Can we add the recommendation that committee would like to see further study on this?
I'd still like to see the splash pad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
I mean, I don't know if you want to have the motion first and then discussion, but I mean.
I thought Christie wanted that as a separate.
Yeah, I think that's separate. That's
Yeah.
probably not part
Oh,
of this
that's a
motion.
third motion.
So that's, Jean, that was your motion.
Okay.
I'll second your motion to rescind
Okay,
the
so
$275,000 in ARPA
McMahon-
funds for the splash pad.
Okay, McMahon motion, Clapp second. Okay, further discussion on just rescinding.
So I think we should keep the money there and figure out what we can do for 275, or at the very least, use that money to do the engineering.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't understand the urgency particularly of rescinding it at the moment, other than we have to reallocate this stuff in time to be used by the end of, be committed by the end of 2024, so that's the
Well,
only
except the
bad
town
thing.
managers explained that the process, if they want to use it for a study,
Would
be-
have to go back to
Would
the
have to go
beginning.
back with a new thing, so we might as well.
Right, I think we
Rescind it.
rescinded. The thing is, there's the
Yeah, that's
275
fair.
we're rescinding, but there's also 221 that's also uncommitted. So then I think the recreation department can come back. We've all said, we think you should do a splash pad, keep looking at it. They can come back and say, here's the price for a study. Can we do that? And then maybe that 221 is the priority and gets us to a full splash pad, right? I mean, I think that's then the next step. But I think we rescind it now and we let them go through the process and do their sort of due diligence. So what does it actually cost to get a design and come back for that next?
Oh, Christie has her hand up, I think.
I think Christie's trying to rein
Or
us
she's
in.
waving. Not sure which. Go ahead, Christie.
I guess I understand what you're saying about the uncommitted balance, but it's really sort of outside the process that we've been using for this committee, which is really receives recommendations and makes recommendations after departments have made requests.
Well, and that was my
So-
suggestion, right, is that they could request the funds for a study. And if there was enough funds available after we've returned this to the pot, then they could request again the full amount, right? I'm saying we rescind it, we give them the option of coming back to us
Well, not
with
to
a
us.
new request, well, I mean in general, right? We
Yeah.
give them the option of coming back with a new proposal with different new updated information, rather than just leaving this money hanging out there that then can't be awarded somewhere else if there is some other priority.
Right.
We rescind it and we let them regroup and decide what's the next step for them and come back and request if they have a new request.
I think the only advantage to not rescinding it is Jen could go now and get an engineering study, spend money to get the design.
Yes. True.
So the next sort of bite of the apple, I guess, is this third ARPA form that I had mentioned, which is actually due tomorrow. So there's, I mean,
Oh, boy, you're gonna be up late.
We can be flexible, obviously, but the point is that we're trying to move forward quickly. So I think, given your concern, I don't think you're probably talking about maybe a few weeks, depending on what Jen comes back with. If she has an interest in moving forward with the splash pad, understanding that obviously she would be managing that project.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we've been talking about a splash pad. I've been here for 10 years. Like, people want one. I know that. But like Christy had said too, I do think there needs to be some work done on location, zoning, because I think the first thing they're going to ask if I go out to a designer is, well, where are you going to put it? Because I think obviously that plays into how they're going to design a splash pad. So I think there's just some more work to be done. And I get that time is of the essence, but I just, knowing what I know now, I want to kind of go into it the right way. Not that I don't think I did anything wrong. I just learned. So I just want to make sure that I'm kind of dotting all my I's, crossing all my T's before I come back and ask for more money and tie up more money that could be allocated somewhere else. I do want I would love to see a splash pad here, but I just want, I've kind of learned a lot from this process of what it would take to get, I've heard people's questions. I just kind of want to do a little bit more research and kind of go about it the right way. So I think maybe trying to find, like, sure up a location, I think maybe is probably even the first step.
Yeah.
And I'd love to just talk to Christy and Kim a little bit more about what their suggestions are. So a couple of days or something to kind of get our heads together might be good. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult when we sort of think of these, this really is a grant. You're a grant, you're part of the awarding body of grant money, and as such, you're not necessarily directing the projects, because if you have a department head that given other work or other complications can't carry out the grant, then that's obviously something that can't happen. So I think what Jen's telling you is that there's a lot to be worked out, which is why we wanted to reallocate the money to the dog park, because it's something that can move forward with actually additional grant money that isn't even our money, which is great. And so that's the project that she's putting before you. And she's not going to immediately have all the answers that she needs to get the quotes. So I think on the flip side of that, we've heard the committee's concern, and so that there's more to come on the splash pad.
Okay.
Understand.
Any further discussion? I think we could vote. So all in favor of rescinding? 4 opposed? 1. 4 to 1, 5 being present. And just a quick follow-up on the park. I think, isn't one of the advantages to doing this with this group, not just, I mean, they're paying for a chunk of it, that's a huge advantage, but they must have experience in these then too, right?
Oh,
So
yeah,
you
they have
get-
recommendations on
You
what
get really good advice on what
Yeah.
works and doesn't work versus us having to learn that the hard way.
exactly. Yep. They have recommendations and support.
Seemed like a good thing.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
before
Thank you
Jen
very much.
leaves, anybody have any other rec questions?
We're actually gonna wait until as soon as she walks out.
Yeah, well, that's what you guys, that's what we usually do. The person leaves the room and then it's like, oh, what about Jen? Okay, no other rec questions tonight. A check on the agenda means our next step is approval of the meeting minutes of May 4th.
So I had sorry.
So, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, you're talking about the thing we're talking about. Okay.
Under call to order,
Mhm.
there's a typo in the first sentence where it says Memorial Town in Westborough Town Hall.
It's Memorial
Memorial
Hall. Okay, that's fine. That's corrected. I found two minor things, as long as we're making a small correction, but this is on the two votes we took by roll call vote. When I got the original draft, I did a markup, and I wrote, I believe we should do these as roll call votes, and
it's in
unfortunately, both those ended up in the minutes, so
Yep.
I would move that we just remove those
Yeah.
two statements of, I think we should vote, because the roll call votes are in there.
Yes.
So I will get those. Any other
It
changes?
also says that Mr. Brady will continue as a liaison for the Library of Trustees and Recreation.
Oh, okay.
I believe that you are, the phrasing there's a little bit
Yes.
awkward, but I believe that you also are the
It's-
liaison for.
It's Mr. Leslie will continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I didn't know
I
who
thought she did
Recreation was, but I
remarkably
knew
well,
that
not
the-
knowing any of us when she did this. This was
Yeah.
pretty good. Okay. So I have 4 corrections. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to approve as corrected.
So on the one where it says that
Okay, more.
Mr. Brady's liaison for the library, you are the liaison for the library. Are you also Recreation, or is that Bradley?
That's Andrew.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Ah,
So there are two,
oh.
in that one line,
So
there were
this needs
two
to get,
errors.
sorry, this needs to get split.
Yep.
Boy, I didn't notice that when I read it. That's good. All right, so Mr. Bradley will continue to serve MIS and GIS, and we can say and recreation. There. How about that? All right,
Okay.
now
There we
5
go.
things.
And in that case, clap motion to approve as amended.
Okay.
McMahon, second?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
I'll abstain.
Abstain, okay. But nobody opposed and 1 abstained, so that's 4-0-1 with 5 present. Okay. So does anybody have a liaison report from any other?
Well, I know you've all been waiting with bated breath to hear what's happening at the Westborough treatment plant.
Yes. Usually hold our breath, but yes.
So Wednesday, I attended the last meeting, and the report is that the rotor project is proceeding. There's been a delay in getting the first set of rotors, but they seem to be on top of it, so no major concerns. The thing I want to share with the board is they did do a very, I thought, a very complete asset renewal study. This was done by Viola, who manages the plant. And they expect to spend over the next 10 years approximately $5 to $6 million. So the question that was discussed that I said I would share tonight was, I don't know if Christie's still here or not, but this may be a Christie Leah question, but if they're going to spend $5 or $6 million over 10 years, do they come back each year with a request for what they're going to spend, or do they try to pull some of it together and have, one for the first 5 years and one for the second 5 years, or do they distribute it somehow through their operating costs? So I think there's some opportunities for discussion, and didn't know what the best forum was to have that. But it's not complete, but one of their next step, once they complete it, will be to figure out how it gets financed, or how the finance gets distributed, I guess is a better way of saying it. So any recommendations by the Finance Committee or what they would like to see would be appreciated.
I don't have the experience to give you that advice.
That's
I would think that, like you said, it's probably
Yeah.
Christie and Leah, but do they must interface with them as well, right? I mean, not through us so to speak.
Yeah, I think Leah has some, I think probably the next step would be to have
Explore with
Leah
them.
come to them and
Yeah.
discuss what the options are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, some of it might be operating, but if they have things that have to be capitalized, right, there's different processes depending on what they're doing, and so they're gonna have to work with Leah to coordinate, what makes sense.
And also, some is, I assume these things get approved at a town meeting, so do you lay out a plan where you're going, like you sort of said, I'm going to town meeting every year for $750,000 for the next 8 years, or am I going once with $3 million and then a few years later?
Right.
That's a good
Yeah, I mean, I
question.
think
I
they're
don't
gonna-
know the strategy.
They're really gonna have to weigh the pros and cons there too. So if you go once and say, we want $5 million over 10 years and get your $5 million up front, you can spend it. If you say, I want this much this year, well, you're limited to the amount you've got this year. And you can't borrow from next year, right? Because I assume it's not level. You're not gonna
Right.
say
No,
$5 million is,
Right.
right, it's not. And so if you tried to go every year, then you're gonna run into, I had too much money in year one and not enough money in year two, and in year one, it's back in the fund, and
No,
in year
no,
two.
no.
Depending on how
If it's a
you
town
ask.
article, the money would stay available for
Right.
future.
But not if you overspent, was
Oh,
my,
you're-
right?
you're
So if
not
you
allowed to
asked for,
overspend,
right, that's the point. So if you asked for
Yeah.
$500,000 and you should have had
You
600,000.
gotta go back and get more.
As opposed to if you just asked for the whole 500 up front, you would just have it till you were
On the
done.
other hand, if you authorize them $3 million, which was supposed to last, 4 years or
Yeah.
something like that, and they spend it all in a year and come back, you're kind of like,
Right. So there's some level of strategy in really being
There
able to
might be.
plan it, but.
I guess it depends on the level of control people are happy with, but I don't have the experience or knowledge to make a suggestion on that, I don't know. All of us are pretty new to this board, actually.
I'd say
The experienced
reach out to
people aren't
Leah.
really here.
Yeah, I would think it would be the Finance
Yeah.
Committee.
Yeah, so I'm the longest person on the board that's here,
Today.
and it's like 2.5 years, so.
Well, Beth's been here
All,
for a
all
while.
our long timers aren't here who might have ideas on that, so. I think it's well worth a phone call to Christie or Leah, or both.
Well, I'll have to say, I thought it was very well done. I
Yeah.
think it's a model that we should look at with other departments in
It's
terms
good
of.
planning, is what
Yeah.
you're saying. But, yeah, and how they would finance it would be, that's a good question. Excellent. Thanks for going and digging in. Any other liaison reports?
I can just mention, Council of Aging, I know everyone knows the senior needs assessment is out and on the website. It is very informative and long.
It's very long.
I know everybody's skimmed it probably once or twice already, but what you might not know is that there was a presentation at the senior center on Tuesday where they sort of did an executive summary review and then had question and answer from people in the audience. It's available on Westborough TV, so if you're looking for a
Cliff
executive
notes
summary
version.
to jump right into, that I would recommend.
Yeah, I did watch that.
Yeah.
And noticed that most of the audience response was not questions, it was statements, but it was.
Yes, that is correct.
That was it.
They have some opinions.
Yeah, it was opinions, right. But it was a good warm-up. I think I will get more out of reading it more thoroughly, having
Yes.
watched the presentation and understanding a little more about why they did certain data, because it's, but it's also going to be interesting to see just what is the impact of that in the long term and what happens out of that, I don't know, but it's good, yes. Anybody else? Okay. So in terms of future draft agendas, we don't have anything immediately on the need. I'm expecting that there might be another transfer or two this year still, but I don't know of any right now. So right now we have tentative meetings on June 1st and 15th, and I'll leave them as placeholders because if we get a request for another transfer or something, those have to be done before July 1st. So, and this is sort of prime season for people to do it if they are going to do it. But I don't know of any other urgent topics or things people are interested in learning more about, but we can examine that. But we could also have just a short meeting if we had to do one of those approvals as we're heading towards the summer season. At my expectation, unless something comes up, we wouldn't probably meet a whole lot in the summer, at most once a month, but maybe not even, unless we have something of urgency. But that by August, or certainly by the end of August, we're going to have to start getting into game shape for the fall town meeting. So we'll probably start getting some information on that at that point. But we'll see. Anybody got anything else?
Just the only thing is, thank you for sharing the
Yes,
year-to-date budget. I thought that was,
that's fascinating.
it really was.
And all the articles.
But
Yeah.
next time we should ask for it in a format other than PDF. Because the nerdy accountant in me really wanted to
Searchable
do
would be
math,
nice.
and you can't do math with PDF, and it did not convert well to Excel.
Don't-
And I spent a
don't
lot of
know
time
about
trying to
getting
make it
in a
work.
format.
But I am curious.
That is nerdy, but
Yeah,
yes. And we will be getting it monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only big picture question is, there are articles, not many, but go back to,
2014 and 20.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I asked
Why?
about that a
I was
little
curious
bit.
about that.
Well, some of them, it's like fire department gets allocated, $5,000 for safety training or something like that. And if they haven't fully spent it, they don't just rescind it. They'll use it still, and they can. That's what it seemed like most of the things were. I didn't do a total deep dive. She says she asks every year, are there ones that, she basically goes to those ones and asks everybody, are you still planning to spend it or not? Because I said, don't these things stay on the list infinitely? And
Yeah, right.
there isn't.
was-
There is a process, but in at least the cases that we looked at quickly, it made some sense that they were still there.
So there were some, to me though, so like 2019, there's an all-terrain, I assume, vehicle with $2,400 left. So I assume the vehicle they purchased was less than the amount by $2,400.
Yeah, so
And
that's
at
a-
what point do we sweep that back, or?
Right.
Because you can't
Are
buy a
they- they're
vehicle with
saving
it,
in
so.
case they break a taillight or something, I don't know.
But that's
Those are
repairs and maintenance
questions-
expense, and this is a capital. I don't think they can.
Yeah,
Right, so I
probably
think
not.
that this just, and so I wonder if it's just an administrative
Or-
process we need to go through.
Well, she
with-
only
It is.
clears them out once a year.
And the
So
ones
that
that
one
we
might-
vote to clear on seem to be pretty old.
Yeah.
No, she can, I think, get rid of.
Pull it up here.
Off this list, but.
Yeah, there's a property appraisal from 18.
All right, it's borrowing
There's
authorization
a-
that we have to rescind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could go into some more detail. I don't want to get too far out of our purview of making recommendations at town meeting versus, deep
Super
dive
granular.
junking with Leah. But although if you have specific questions, she's very good at that.
Well, so there weren't any
have.
that, like, a particular one that was worth questioning. It did make me question the process, though, at what point, because these, theoretically, right, this dollar amount gets pretty big when you add up $2,000 here,
Right.
and, I don't know, a ceiling from 2015, I hope we've repaired the ceiling already.
Yeah.
Or, right, so there's some that I just can't imagine. There's a 4th of July block party from 2014.
Actually,
still have money in that?
Yeah.
just, that's a
That
typo.
seems odd.
That's actually a typo. 14 should be 24.
Yeah, so, yeah, so,
Oh,
if you look at the
that
thing.
makes a lot
it's
more
not a complete
sense.
typo. There are actually a couple items from 2014 in there, but she hasn't relabeled all at the top where it says 2014. But if you look at each individual line, you'll see it says whether it's from 14 or 24. And the block party's from 24.
It is from 24. I
Yeah.
feel a lot better about the block party.
Yeah.
I was like, I think it's
No, it
not
would've-
going to
it
happen,
would've gotten
guys. Like,
spent
that
the
ship
next year.
sailed.
We
Okay.
had a few rainouts. Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I was fascinated by that form, so it's kind of cool we get that. And, all right, any motion to adjourn?
Shafford, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Clap
McMahon,
second.
second.
Okay. All in favor? No one's allowed to be opposed. It's 500. Thank you, Westborough TV, and good night.